Starting at an early age, I heard the old adage that life is strange. It wasn't until I turned 32 that I thought about it more than any other proverb, like, a bulldog can kick a skunk, but it's not worth it, and a clear conscience is a sign of a bad memory. Maybe I should have done this sooner. A little backstory is necessary before I tie the old proverb to my life. I'm Kirk Bronson. I had a typical childhood in suburban America. I was the son of a fireman and a teacher. I had a younger brother, Tom, and an older sister, Jill. We had a tight-knit family, we all got along, we did all the things normal families do, and we had better relationships with each other than most of my friends and acquaintances had with their relatives. I was especially close with Tom and Jill. We always had each other's backs throughout school and even after school. Tom married his high school sweetheart Melinda when he was 20, and I was best man and Jill was maid of honor. Unfortunately, my father died an agonizing death from a rare form of cancer called HDGC before Jill got married. So I gave her away when she married Bill, and Tom was best man and his wife Melinda was maid of honor. After Jill's wedding, Mom regularly asked me when I was going to meet the right woman. I wasn't smarter than my brother and sister, but luckier, and the sports I was good at brought in more money, so I got more education. I got a soccer scholarship to one of the best universities in the Midwestern United States. I was 6 feet 3 inches tall, weighing 245 pounds. The college was better known for journalism, business, both undergraduate and graduate, biomedical engineering, and medical schools than soccer, so I started my freshman year. I still fantasize that I would have been successful in the NFL had it not been for a knee injury my sophomore year that ended my playing days. However, things ended well for me, as I still had a scholarship and enough free time that I excelled enough in my business major to go to a top business school. I probably had a normal social life, with a couple of fairly long-term romantic relationships when I wasn't playing soccer anymore, but I didn't meet the right woman. That was until my last year of grad school. Ashley Bronson, yes, the same last name I had when I met her, though not related, perhaps that should have tipped me off that life is weird, was pursuing a PhD in biomedical engineering. When I first confronted her, literally throwing her books and laptop around, but thankfully not causing any harm, I thought she was the most intriguing woman I'd ever seen in my life. When instead of getting mad at me, she made me buy her coffee to apologize, I was shocked, to say the least. During what may have been the weirdest first 20-minute conversation I'd ever had with anyone in my life while we sipped our lattes, I was even more shocked that she didn't have a steady boyfriend. She had an exotic face, a smoking hot body, and regal posture, but she was so witty that she made me smile like no other girl I'd ever met in my life. It was also clear that she was smarter than anyone I had ever met before. Her vocabulary almost required the listener to have a dictionary at the ready. I understood no more than 5 words out of about 30 words of the description of the topic of her doctoral dissertation in biomedical engineering, and she knew more about Keynesian economics than I did, even though I was a graduate business student. I asked her out on a date. She wrote down from memory the next 5 4-hour windows she would have available, none of them, as usual, on a Friday night, and asked me to pick one. I chose one from 10:35 p.m. next Wednesday night to 2:35 a.m. Thursday night. She extended her hand for me to shake, gave me her address, and smiled broadly as she walked away with a smooth gait, wiggling her magnificent ass defiantly. I'd spent most of my waking hours the 4 days before our date exploring Ashley, doing enough schoolwork to keep my head above water. Some of the softer comments I got from guys and girls who knew Ashley were, "She's hot as hell, but more fragile than strudel. She's so smart she's on the planet Venus, not Earth." And my favorite, "Some people are born weird, some people achieve it. Others have weirdness imposed on them. Ashley combines all 3. I learned from a biomedical engineering faculty assistant that Ashley was not only legitimately a genius, but had won the Intel Innovation Medal as a 15-year-old in high school, had received full academic scholarships throughout college, had been the most successful student every year at the universities where she earned her undergraduate and graduate degrees, and was now the star of the PhD program. She had already worked for every major biomedical engineering company and research institution in the country. Although I thought she was older than me because she had almost finished her PhD and was so social and elegant, because of her rapid growth in educational institutions, she was actually a year younger than me. Nothing I heard turned me away from our date. When I showed up at her apartment at 10:31, she said, "You're 4 minutes early. Have a seat while I make a little progress on some very complicated calculations I'm doing." I've never seen someone doing calculations before, but then again, I'm not a biomedical engineer. I watched intently as her pencil flew across the page of an engineering notebook with a thick textbook open in front of her. At exactly 10:34, she dropped the pencil and said, "No luck," but with a smile on her face. Then she ran to her bedroom, and when she came out a minute later, almost exactly 10:35, she had changed from jeans, tank top, and sandals to a tight dress and 4-inch heels, and her hair had gone from a bun to loose and almost styled, hanging down to her shoulders. "Let's go dancing," she said with a wide smile. There was only one problem, dancing with Ashley. All eyes were on her. At least half a dozen guys tried to interfere, especially during the slow dances, but she turned them all down. I think my discerning gaze ruled out any arguments, and only had eyes for me. She moved like a cat and looked like a work of art, an image of Aphrodite, to be precise. She was a cheap date, drinking only soda, no booze. Around 1 a.m., she asked, "Do you have a roommate?" "No," I grinned. "Why?" She ran her index finger across my chest and said, "Don't you have any prints you'd like to show me?" Although she had been cheerful and playful on the way to my house, when we got inside, she went into a frenzy. It was only a few minutes before I was lying naked on my back in my bed, and she was waving her big, beautiful tootsies in my face while stroking me. It was the best first sex I'd ever had with any woman in my life. However, the first sex paled in comparison to the second, in which I sat on the edge of the mattress and she sat facing me, straddling my torso with her sculpted thighs. At 2:20, she lifted her head from my shoulder as I lay there with the most contented feeling of my life and said, "I need to be home in 15 minutes. Walk me out, stud." I obeyed, received a firm kiss as I delivered her to the apartment at 2:34, and she gave me my choice of the next 3 4-hour windows of time. I chose Sunday morning, 7:20 to 11:20. Upon waking up Thursday morning, I immediately noticed 2 messages from Ashley. The first, sent at 2:40 a.m., said, "I had a great time, stud. Maybe you really are the right one for a relationship." That made me smile because I was thinking the same thing myself. The next one, sent at 3:51 a.m., read, "You cleared my mind so much that I finished the most complicated calculation of my life less than an hour after you dropped me off. Thank you," followed by a wink and a smiley face emoji. Sunday's date was great. We had breakfast at IHOP, biked through the park, threw rocks in the pond, joined an impromptu game of volleyball, went to an art exhibit as soon as it opened, and had a serious discussion about the anatomical and psychological aspects of proper blocking and tackling techniques in soccer. At 11:10, we sat on a bench outside her apartment. She displayed her characteristic sincerity in our brief but very sweet conversation. "I'm starting to write my dissertation in earnest, Kurt. I don't have time for dating or pretending, but I need close human contact. Are you interested in a relationship that could last at least a year, maybe forever? Would it involve sex the way our first date ended?" Was my toothy question and answer. With a faint smile, she replied, "It should be much better than that. We were just starting to get used to each other." "Where should I sign?" I asked. "A verbal commitment is all that is necessary. I must warn you, though, I work unusual hours and sometimes have urgent needs, so you will have to be flexible to accommodate me." "As long as you are flexible when I adjust to you," I laughed, "that won't be a problem. I'm weird, you know. Can you accept me like this? Since you're witty, smart, sexy, cheerful, and beautiful, I can accept weird," I grinned. Ashley smiled broadly, gave me a kiss that touched my soul, and then slipped away with a statement. "I'll email you all the dates for dates next month when I'm available for vacation, food, or fucking, though you'll also have to expect some surprise visits." And so my relationship with Ashley Bronson began in earnest. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The next year was a real whirlwind. While there was actually a great deal of planned contact and activities with Ashley, the spontaneous ones seemed to define our relationship more than the pre-planned ones. A typical call at 10 o'clock on a weeknight would be, "I'm having writer's block as my dissertation transitions between data and conclusions. Come clear my mind. I'll email you all the dates for dates next month when I'm available for vacation, food, or fun, though you'll also have to expect some surprise visits." I would show up at her apartment 20 minutes later, and after an intense hour of intimate contact, I would return to my apartment a genuinely happy and satisfied person, and Ashley would return to her laptop. Ashley was actually right when she made her relationship proposal. Once we got used to each other, sex went from being the best thing in the world to otherworldly. However, there was one odd thing that I noticed, but never really paid attention to. The only times she wanted doggy style were when I got one of her emergency calls. Otherwise, she only ever wanted face-to-face positions. "We make love more than sex, dude," was her only comment on the matter. Our relationship was defined by more than just sex, however. We had many intellectual discussions, went to cultural and sporting events, just had silly times together, and did everything together that a couple can aspire to. I was completely in love with her after the first month of our relationship, and my feelings only intensified. Luckily, I got my MBA before her thesis was due, so I had a lot of free time to please her. I had great success when I read every word of her second draft of her dissertation, corrected half a dozen grammatical errors, and actually, by pure chance, found an error in one of her equations. She had used the Greek letter lambda where it should have been gamma. Her surprised look turned into a sly grin. "I didn't know you were an expert on boundary layer problems," she giggled. My main contribution to her doctoral dissertation, however, was twofold. The first contribution was that I told her that she needed to patent the equipment she had developed to take advantage of the conclusions she had reached. Since we had no real disposable income at the time, I used negotiation skills that would later serve me well in business to hire a local patent attorney to handle the case for free with the promise of payment from the future business of Ashley, a brilliant biomedical engineer. The patent was easily obtained and eventually led to a significant flow of money. The second contribution was to get the crap out of her doggy style before her final completion of her thesis and just before her presentation for her thesis defense. The presentation was supposed to take 2 hours. It took 3.5 hours, and the professors universally regarded it as the best dissertation defense any of them had ever seen or heard of. The night after her presentation, she woke me up twice as often in 8 hours as I had ever experienced before, and the next morning she suggested we move in together. Ashley and I were married 3 months after she earned her doctorate. It was a simple civil ceremony, with only our immediate family in attendance. Since we already had the same last name, there was no reason to have an unpleasant discussion about any name change as a result of the marriage. My family loved Ashley, especially my sister Jill, who treated her like a sister, and Ashley loved both my blood relatives and their spouses, Jill and Tom, equally. Ashley took one of the dozens of jobs she was offered in the same town where I got my best job offer, and we soon had a substantial cash flow, especially from royalties, on her seemingly uninterrupted stream of patented inventions. It seemed that every time we had a sex marathon, she came up with something new. A significant dark cloud appeared in our happy existence when Tom was diagnosed with HDGC, the same cancer from which my father died. Ashley immediately learned everything she could about HDGC, researching it for 20 hours straight. She insisted that Jill and I be tested immediately to see if we had any genetic markers that might indicate a predisposition to HDGC, since there was a hereditary component to it. Jill and I were immediately tested, and thankfully neither of us had those markers. Ashley, however, was far from done. In less than a week, she identified an existing organization, acronym RCA, that was doing research for a related cancer, arranged funding for that organization to switch to researching a cure for HDGC, and took a leave of absence from her job to join that organization to share her expertise, intellect, and passion. My entire family was amazed at Ashley's take on the responsibility and the fact that a portion of the funds RCA received came from her patent royalties. RCA had a staff that, with Ashley's addition, seemed capable of success. Because HDGC is more or less a rare disease, there had never been a truly first-rate effort to cure it before, but now, thanks to Ashley's leadership, they had a chance. The other employees of RCA were the director, Dr. John Paxton, a man in his early 50s who had an MD and PhD in cancer immunology. I had never heard of this science before, and was known as an expert manager, Dr. Hua Lee, a Korean-American woman in her early 40s, whose PhD was some form of pharmaceutical science I couldn't pronounce, Dr. Chad Beltran, a guy about my height in his early 40s who had an MD and a master's degree in biochemistry. RCA had one major disadvantage. It was located 150 miles from where Ashley and I lived, and I was at a point in my career where, if I moved, it would be a disaster. If there was any way I could really help research at the RCA, I would have done it, but I had no experience. Nevertheless, I was tireless in my off hours trying to raise money for research. I didn't enjoy living apart from Ashley. Being with her was the joy of my life, and having her 2.5 hours away by car while she worked 12 hours a day was painful. While Ashley and I talked on the phone every night for half an hour, and while I visited her in the apartment she rented just a mile from RCA from Friday night to Sunday night, we had a hard time. Friday night, she was exhausted, although she really enjoyed my service and lovemaking. On Saturday, she worked from about 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., and on Sunday night, she went to work as soon as I left for home. Although it was painful to be away from Ashley, there was no doubt that RCA was making progress, and my whole family was so enthusiastic about the effort that Tom was not deteriorating as quickly as my father. Of course, this was particularly good news as Tom and Melinda had 2 young children at the time of his diagnosis. In fact, just a month later, the RCA came up with a drug that would undoubtedly delay the disease for several months. Of course, the drug was not FDA approved, and I had to smuggle it from RCA to Tom to take it. Ashley assured me that it would have no significant side effects, and Tom couldn't wait to use it. Phone calls followed that put me in the worst dilemma of my life and clearly demonstrated to me that life is weird. On Tuesday night, Ashley told me about how they had encountered a major roadblock, and then the next night told me they had a eureka moment and overcame it, when I enthusiastically inquired about how they had gotten over it. She gave a bullshit answer, changed the subject, and then, during the rest of the conversation, her voice sounded different. After I hung up, I started to remember the days of her PhD writing days when she would call me for intense sex to get over some mental block, and an unpleasant feeling came over me. I tried to put it out of my mind, but I couldn't. When I saw her that weekend, she seemed to be trying too hard to act normal, though there was no doubt that she was fully immersed in our lovemaking. When she told me again the following Wednesday evening about another obstacle that was holding up their exploration, I became proactive. Early the next morning, I went to the RCA office with a well-thought-out ruse to explain why I would show up. I got there around 10 a.m. I asked for Ashley at the front desk. It was a safe place given the materials they were working with. But Ashley didn't come out to greet me. I was met by the director, Dr. Paxton. I had interacted with all the researchers at one point or another during my weekend trips over the previous 3 months, and knew Dr. Paxton well enough to call him John. One thing I recognized about him shortly after I met him was that he was very honest. How nice to see you, Kurt," was his awkward greeting. "To what do we owe the honor of your presence?" "I had a meeting with an important client in your neck of the woods that came up suddenly, so I thought I'd stop by to say hello to my lovely wife. Where's Ashley?" You see," he began. John is an extremely intelligent and eloquent guy. His concern and hesitation at his words confirmed in my mind what I was thinking. She's not here now," he concluded, as sweat broke out on his forehead. "Right, John. Then why is her car in the parking lot? Let's talk in your office, John." He reluctantly led me into his office. I could see the lab from his office, and Dr. Lee and the 4 technicians were busy working, and I could see from his usual lab station that he had been there before I showed up, too. "Listen, John," I got straight to the point. "I have my suspicions about how Ashley overcomes the mental challenges she faces during her research, and now I notice that she and Chad Beltran are not in the lab, but both of their cars are in the parking lot. What gives?" John could see that I was out of my depth. He spoke hesitantly, not looking me in the eye. "Kurt, you can't do anything to hurt our research. We're so close, and we need Ashley at her best to get past the peak. You know she loves you wholeheartedly, and Chad is crazy about his wife. But Ashley has that special—" I interrupted him. "Where are they?" I asked sternly. John looked defeated. "You have to promise me that you won't do anything rash, that you'll wait until we find a cure or permanent treatment. Your brother's life depends on it, and the lives of hundreds of others in our country with the same condition." A sudden calmness swept over me as I thought of Tom, Melinda, and my young niece and nephew. "John, I won't do anything rash. Where are they?" John sighed. He reached into his desk and handed me the key. "They're in the sleep room. If you're careful when you open the door, you can see them behind the two-way mirror, but they won't be able to detect your presence. Please, your brother's life depends on it. Don't confront them or do anything rash. I've seen a sleep room once before. It had a couch and a double bed that researchers used to take breaks after their long hours. I didn't need to go through the lab and alert the other employees of my presence to get to it." Silently unlocking the door, I heard the sounds I was expecting. Looking in the two-way mirror, I saw Chad Beltran having an Ashley doggy style. I felt weak, then nauseous. I quietly closed the door, went into the men's room where I threw up, then returned the key to John. "How long has this been going on?" I asked John with a calmness that contradicted the confusion inside me. "I'm not quite sure, but I think this might be the third or fourth time. There have only been 2 or 3 times in the past when they left together. Each time we reached a plateau in research, and when they came back, Ashley saw the solution within hours. I'm so sorry. Keep my visit between us, and tell the secretary not to say anything to anyone either," I said. On my way out the door, I turned and said, "I promise not to screw up the research, although I have no idea what I'll do after that." That evening on the phone, I asked Ashley about the problem she had mentioned the night before. Unsurprisingly, she addressed the problem. She asked why my voice sounded detached. I told her that I had something going on. I faked being sick that weekend because I couldn't face her yet. She expressed genuine concern and said she would visit me, but I told her we couldn't risk it. "The kids need Tom, Ashley. I can't have you getting sick." I'm pretty sure Ashley worked all weekend. Monday morning, Ashley, clearly sleep-deprived, called to say that she thought she had made a breakthrough, and that Dr. Lee and 2 technicians were implementing it right now, and that John and Chad were visiting a local hospital to access a patient who had HDGC. 2 hours later, she called me back. "I just got off the phone with Dr. Lee and then John on the phone. I am confident that we have achieved not just a treatment but a cure. However, a local HDGC patient wants nothing to do with the trial. Can you bring Tom here? I'll call him right now," I said dryly. "Thank you, Ashley." Of course, Tom was more than ready. Despite the drug he'd been taking unofficially, he'd been feeling increasingly worse over the past few days. I took him to the RCA, he signed some forms, and Ashley and John hooked him up to an IV with an experimental drug and a pulse generator Ashley had designed within an hour of his arrival. I saw Chad heading toward me to say hello, but I quickly slipped out. I didn't think I could keep myself from knocking his teeth out, which wouldn't be good for future developments. Ashley called me on my cell phone as I was coming home. "Kurt, I was so disappointed that you left. I was hoping you'd stay for a few days while we treated Tom." "I'm sorry, dear, but I have an appointment I can't miss this afternoon." "When will Tom be done?" "In 3 days, we'll send him home and continue his treatment there. I'll give you a progress report tomorrow, but I hope to be able to come back as soon as Tom goes home. I really missed you, Kurt." "Okay, Ashley, let's hope this works out. I picked Tom up and moved him back in 3 days. Ashley is coming home 3 days after Tom's return. She said, especially given the way Tom has responded to treatment, the RCA expects all the details of the new HDGC treatment to be worked out over the next 2 months, and Ashley has no reason to stay and work at the RCA. She and Tom can have a video conference with Dr. Paxton every day, and she can simultaneously work on optimizing the pulse generator aspect of the treatment, which she has developed to work in conjunction with the medication given intravenously every few hours. We had a video link session this morning. I can tell Tom is much, much better. In fact, he even thinks he's fine and wanted to play tennis with me this morning. Dr. Paxton and I put a stop to that. Tom, I really hope you'll be normal. You mean as normal as he's ever been? I interjected, causing laughter all around. Yes, as normal as you've ever been for a month, 6 weeks tops. But don't do anything stupid to slow your progress, Paxton warned seriously. Could I at least play a game of chess with Kurt? Tom asked, with a twinkle in his eye. As long as the pieces aren't life-size, Paxton grinned back. After the video conference session with Ashley and Paxton, Ashley called me on my cell phone. Honey, there's something we need to talk about as soon as I get home. I probably should have talked to you about it sooner, but I've been so focused on healing that I put it off. But I love you so much, and we need to talk about this right now so it doesn't affect our future together. Of course, I knew what it was about. However, I played dumb because I was still mentally playing ping pong. Whatever you have to say, I just need you back as soon as possible, I replied, hoping there wasn't a trace of inner turmoil in my voice. Now it was time to make a decision. I knew what Ashley was like when she was getting her doctorate. What made me believe things would be different now that she was focused on developing a cure for my brother, to save him for her family, and not leave Melinda a widow and my niece and nephew fatherless. With Ashley putting everything on the line, I should have sent my career to hell and joined her. There was no way she would have cheated if I had been there to help her fulfill her peculiar need. However, cheating is still cheating, and I have such a hard time accepting that. I know she didn't love Chad. Heck, the fact that, given her way of looking at things, they slept doggy-style instead of face-to-face made it clear that she was just using him. But that's faint consolation when you're having your guts ripped out. I can't imagine life without Ashley, but how can I get past her cheating? It will probably never happen again. But what about my doubts? I know I should at least have a plan for what to do when she confesses her cheating tomorrow. However, right now I can only guess what that might be. Yes, life is weird, and right now it sucks.